whole spit roasted prime rib, guaranteed to bring down the house. A new Philly cheesesteak made with a spectacular grilled whole beef tenderloin. Smoky Texas-style brisket. You can really appreciate the spice and smoke flavor. Big beef, big meals, and really big taste. I'm Stephen Raichlen, and from the beautiful Tubac Golf Resort near Tucson, Arizona, it's time for Beef on the Grill. Size really does matter. Every aspiring grill master should know how to tackle the really big cuts of beef. Brisket, prime rib, and beef tenderloin. Big beef, like big game, will impress the hell out of your friends and family. Are you up to the challenge? Well, when it comes to barbecuing and grilling, the last place on the planet you think about is England. A, because they don't have a barbecue tradition, and B, because it rains so much. But they do have a fabulous big beef dish, and it is prime rib with Yorkshire pudding. So I had the idea to cook the prime rib using the spit roasting method, and then further to enhance its flavor by making a series of slits in the meat, and in some placing sprigs of fresh rosemary, in some slivers of whole garlic, and finally in some slivers of Asiago cheese. Half the secret of mastering the grill is learning the art of showmanship. Few dishes are more spectacular than a sizzling, spit-fired rib roast. This is a 14-pound full rib roast. And there's a strip at the bottom called the lip. It's mostly fat, so you want to ask your butcher to remove it. Now you can see I've laid out 6 strings parallel to one another, and you'll see why in a moment. Arrange some fresh rosemary sprig on the strings, 1 row every 4 inches. Then place your rib roast on top of the rosemary. Now here comes the cool part. Taking the tip of a paring knife, and you want to put your thumb about 1 inch up from the end of the blade, make a series of incisions in the roast, placed about 1.5 inches to 2 inches apart. Then cut whole garlic cloves in halves or thirds. Cut rosemary branches into 2-inch sprigs. And cut sticks of Asiago cheese sharply on the diagonal. Next, insert a clove of garlic in one hole, a sprig of rosemary in the next hole, and a sliver of Asiago in the third hole. Continue in this fashion until the roast is entirely studded with garlic, rosemary, and cheese. Finally, season the roast on all sides with coarse sea salt and freshly ground or cracked black peppercorns. Now tie the roast into a compact cylinder using butcher's string and a surgeon's lock knot, which is made by doubling this string through the loop. Here's another knot. This is a butcher's knot. You come through, loop the string over your finger, bring it under and around, tuck the end through, and then pull the string tight. And don't forget to cut off the ends of the strings with the scissors. So why do you bother to tie up the roast? Well, it gives the roast a compact shape, which fits better on the rotisserie and helps for more even cooking. There are just 2 things left to do. Put the spit in the roast Don't forget to put the other prong on to hold the roast. And don't forget to season the bottom. And put the roast on the grill. I've taken out the grill grates to give a little more clearance room and placed 2 drip pans under the roast to catch the drippings. Now turn on the rotisserie and close the grill. It's been 2 hours and check out our rib roast. It looks perfect. But the way you tell for sure is to use your trusty instant read meat thermometer. We're looking for an internal temperature of about 125 degrees. That's rare. So insert it in the roast, midpoint but not touching the skewer. Bingo, we're at 125. Remember, a roast this size is going to continue to cook 5 to 10 degrees warmer in the center as it rests. Using your tongs, you want to pull out the turn spit. And you want to let this roast rest about 20 minutes. The meat tenses up during the cooking process, and if you let it rest, it will relax, and you'll find it'll be much more juicy. While the roast is resting, you can cut off and remove the trussing string. Ditto for these stalks of rosemary. And this is going to be a very long 15 minutes. All you have to do is carve it. Two more important statistics. One, this was a 14-pound rib roast. Two, it will serve about 20 to 22 people. And with the beef, a rosemary peppercorn sauce. The recipe's on our website. So here you have it. A sizzling, spit-fired rib roast stuffed with garlic, rosemary, and Asiago cheese. In Philadelphia, cheesesteak is made with some of the most inexpensive beef, top round or bottom round, that's thinly sliced on a meat slicer. And the idea is you slice it thinly to cut the tough meat fibers so it will give the illusion of being tender. Remember the Philly cheesesteak? Well, here's an uptown version made with a spectacular whole beef tenderloin, stuffed with fire-roasted onions and poblano chilies and provolone cheese. It's a guaranteed showstopper, and best of all, you can make it in less than an hour. There are just 2 things you need to do ahead of time: grill the onions and roast the chili. I call these onion lollipops, and the skewer helps keep the onion slices from falling apart during grilling. Brush each slice with extra virgin olive oil on both sides, then season with salt and pepper. By the way, you can do this at a previous grill session the night before, for example. And just to show you here, we've got a couple onions and peppers I grilled earlier. This is a whole beef tenderloin, 3 pounds of pure carnivorian pleasure. Trim off the silvery skin on the top. By the way, when you sharpen a knife, never do it directly over the meat. You don't want the metal filings to drop on the meat. Okay, here comes the cool part. So, Using a chef's knife, cut a deep pocket in the tenderloin. And the idea here is you want to cut to, but not through, the far edge. Then open up the tenderloin, season with salt, coarse sea salt, as I always use, and cracked or freshly ground black peppercorns. And stuff the steak with provolone cheese, grilled onions, and roasted peeled poblano chilies. Then fold the meat back over itself to reconstitute the tenderloin. You can see I've laid out 6 pieces of butcher string. And invert the tenderloin onto the butcher string. Tie it back up into a compact roast. This is our surgeon's lock knot. Loop through once, then once again, pull tight, and tie off the string. I learned this knot from one of my students who is a surgeon. Snip off the ends. And there's your stuffed tenderloin, and believe it or not, that's the hardest part of the recipe. Now, before it goes on the grill, simply brush it on all sides with extra virgin olive oil and season with a little more of our coarse sea salt and cracked black peppercorns. Now let me show you the grill. This is a wood-burning grill modeled on the grills you find in South America. The grate, for example, is made from these V-shaped bars which channel the fat into the drip pan. The grill is open in front so you can add logs to fuel the fire. And as always, before you put the meat on, brush and oil the grill grate. And here's a trick I learned on a recent trip to Israel. Impale an onion at the end of a carving fork, dip it in oil, and use the onion to oil the grill grate. And place the tenderloin on the grill. You can test the heat of the fire by holding your hand about 3 inches above the grate. Start counting. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Ouch, that's a pretty hot fire. So what's the deal about grilling over wood? Well, it's different than smoking. The wood provides the heat and a delicate smoke flavor. It's not like the heavy smoke flavor you get in Southern-style barbecue. And to ensure even cooking, rotate the tenderloin, and who knows, you might even get a handsome crosshatch of grill marks. The tenderloin cooks for about 4 to 6 minutes per side. You'll give it a quarter turn. Total cooking time, somewhere about 16 to 24 minutes. And meanwhile, with our Philly cheesesteak, how about some grilled garlic bread? This is a flavored butter made with chopped fresh garlic and parsley. Spread it on your favorite bread. I use salted butter. It has more flavor than unsalted. And barbecue is delicious, but it's not subtle. And because bread tends to stick to the grill grate, always remember to oil the grate before putting on the garlic bread. Toast the garlic bread buttered side down first. Now remember, bread and butter are 2 of the most flammable substances you can put on a grill, so do not desert your post. So when the garlic bread is browned on one side, turn it over and brown the other. So here's the grilled garlic bread, and I can't wait to chomp into this one. how delicious that looks. So let's check on the tenderloin. Now, there are two tests for doneness. The first is the old poke test. The meat feels gently yielding. Of course, you can also use an instant read meat thermometer. Insert it in one end of the tenderloin. You're looking for about 145 degrees, and we are right on the money. I've let the tenderloin rest for about 10 minutes. You never want to cut into meat hot off the grill or it will be dry. Don't forget to remove the string. If you let it rest, the meat will relax and it will taste much more juicy. This looks incredible. With a nice blush of red to it, just like I like it. And this is a chipotle mayonnaise. You'll find the recipe on our website. So there it is, from sub shop to showstopper, a Philly cheesesteak you'll never forget. If you were a pit master in Texas, you'd start with what's called a packer brisket. It's whole brisket, 18 pounds of pure proteinaceous pleasure. And a packer brisket is covered with about an inch thick sheath of fat. It's great for cooking because the fat melts during the slow smoking process and keeps the meat moist and tender. Admit it, guys and gals, here's why you really tuned in. You want to master brisket. We get more correspondence about brisket than any other topic. So listen up. Here's everything you need to know to turn out a textbook Texas brisket. Brisket comes in many cuts and sizes. This is called a packer cut. It's almost the entire brisket, including a cap of meat called the decal. This is a first cut or brisket flat, and it's what you're likely to find at the supermarket. Like so many smoked meat recipes, this one begins with a rub. Start with salt, black pepper, chili powder, brown sugar, onion powder, garlic powder, cumin, oregano, and cayenne pepper for heat. Mix the ingredients together, breaking up any lumps in the brown sugar. And spread the rub over the brisket. This brisket is going to cook somewhere between 10 and 12 hours, and the fat will keep it moist during the cooking. Now, these two cuts of meat require a slightly different approach. The packer brisket has so much fat it can go into the smoker as is. With the flat, because it's so lean, I like to cook it in a foil pan to protect the bottom from the heat and also drape the top with bacon. To cook the briskets, I'm using the classic Texas-style smoker. It's called an offset barrel smoker because it has a firebox that is slightly lower than the smoke chamber. Now, the end of the smoke chamber closest to the firebox burns hotter than the chimney end of the smoke chamber. So I'll put the packer brisket thick side towards the fire. The smaller, leaner brisket flat can go further away from the fire and close the firebox. The way the smoker works is you build a fire with charcoal, and that charcoal fire is going to be what provides the heat. And then to generate the smoke, toss a couple of soaked oak logs on the fire. A couple more points. The way you control the heat in one of these smokers is by opening and closing the dampers. Wide open gives you more air, more heat. Closed damper cuts down the airflow, gives you a lower heat. This smoker comes with 2 thermometers because the heat differential closer to the fire, further away from the fire, is about 25 degrees. Now, brisket is relatively easy to make. You saw I seasoned it right in front of you. However, it does require patience. That Packer brisket's going to take about 10 to 12 hours. The brisket flat is going to take about 4 to 6 hours. Let me show you how to make the mop sauce. Mop sauce consists of vinegar, beer, garlic salt, brown sugar, hot pepper flakes, and black pepper. You know what? It's a shame to waste that beer. Whisk until the sugar is dissolved. And the purpose of a mop sauce is to help keep the brisket moist during cooking. And it also adds an extra layer of flavor. What you want to do is mop the briskets once an hour with the mop sauce. It's been 6 hours and the smaller brisket should be ready, but the way you check it is using our trusty instant read meat thermometer. We're looking for about 190 degrees. Bingo. So you can use a meat hook to take the brisket out, and we'll transfer it to a cutting board, and look how juicy. The knife just glides through this meat. And check out this smoke ring. And I always like to show a bit of the big piece of brisket. This is a Lone Star barbecue sauce. The recipe is on the website. But you know what? When I make brisket, I always serve it with the sauce on the side so you can really appreciate the spice and smoke flavor. Let's see how we did. Texas-style brisket. It tastes like big beef should. A sizzling, spit-fired whole rib roast. Smoky Texas-style brisket. And a new Philly cheesesteak. Mammoth beef for a master griller. See you next time. Actually, the first time I saw a guy using a mop, and it's a floor mop to apply a sauce, was in Owensboro, Kentucky, home of barbecued mutton. Well, my first thought was, boy, I hope he started with a clean mop. I'm just kidding. Actually, my first thought was, I have to do this at home, and I have to do this on television. This is too cool.